great to be here and speak to you all today. It's fantastic to see all of your presentations. So I am doing an iCase, which is supported by Constructing Excellence and Costain. However, I do now like to think of myself as a bit of an adopted child for the BRE Trust and all the fantastic work that you guys are doing. And I think PhDs within our industry is a hugely important area. It progresses our industry to the next level. And I'll come to that a bit shortly. So my PhD is different to most things you've seen today. It's been quite technical and it's fantastic, real innovation and fantastic minds in this room. But how do you get that innovation to be used on a project, and how do you go on that journey? So my frustration, so my background is commercial and legal background. So I work in the legal department of Costain. Is how do you maximize innovation on major projects and programs? So a lot of the time from working in the legal department, I would get frustrated that each and every time an innovation wanted to be introduced onto a project, you'd have to reinvent the wheel every single time, negotiate who has the risk, and it seemed a very convoluted process that I thought could be streamlined and improved in some way. So you'll see here a brief abstract of what my PhD was to be at the very beginning stage, and you'll notice there it refers to business innovation. However, I've already discovered, and I'm coming up to the 1 year mark, so not as advanced as other people you've seen today, but I've already done some research in that time, and I've already discovered that business to business is too limiting. So already in the industry, I think we're already seeing that and understanding that all of the best and brightest ideas and people don't reside within one company, and indeed not even within one industry. We have to look very broad. A good idea could come from any individual working in any organization around the world. So this is a good illustration of that initial frustration. So we're very good at bringing innovation at the beginning of a project, but then once that contract and that project is underway and the contract is executed, it then becomes much more difficult to then bring and introduce innovation onto a project. And this is something I wanted to try and address. So I teamed up during my first year with Cambridge University and a firm called Pinsent Masons, which are a law firm. And we looked at this, the issue of how do we look at procurement and improving procurement to aid and assist bring innovation onto projects. And as projects become much larger and more complex and longer in duration, this is becoming much more of an important area. And I think we're at a unique time now in terms of the major infrastructure projects that we have coming up in the pipeline. You've got the 3 major H's. You've got your Heathrow, Hinckley, and HS2. You've got Crossrail 2. You've got Thames Tideway tunnels. And it's a really exciting time to be in the infrastructure space within our industry at the moment. And there is some great work being done. But as part of this project, we did a number of workshops, and we tried to speak to a broader range of the industry as possible. So we had the people who write the standard contracts, NEC and such, all in the room. We had the designers, the client, subcontractors, SMEs, absolutely everybody to come together and to discover the barriers that they'd experienced in bringing innovation onto projects. So as a result of that, we came up with a number of proposals and recommendations, and that's what I'm going to go through now for you. So I spoke about the importance of PhDs within the industry. So it's very common within the industry to have a an apprenticeship mechanism. So you'll all be familiar with, you get a project of a certain size, and for so many £1 million, you'll have an apprentice. And there's no such mechanism for that for PhDs, which I think is a real failing. And you can see from the presentations that you've all seen today, the real value in PhDs in progressing the industry. You'll see also their job titles, and that's really a reference to the fact that innovation is really everybody's responsibility. It's not something that, oh, that's something the innovation team does, or it's only done in universities and R&D teams. That's not the case. Everybody should be thinking about innovation and how to improve. Training was a real realization from doing the research that, and this was experienced on Crossrail, you may have 60 fantastic innovations arise during that project, and that could be fantastically successful and grow and get legs of its own. But the person who came up with that innovation may not be the best person to advance and take that innovation forward. So you essentially, if you have 60 successful innovations, you need 60 accomplished project managers to then take that innovation and run with it. And we think some real training would be valuable in that area. Research in the early stages of infrastructure development is relating back to the kind of unique position that we're in at the moment in terms of major infrastructure projects, and just making sure that everybody is speaking to each other, so that Thames Tideway is speaking to HS2 and best practice is shared, and you're not looking at new areas and you're starting from the best point every single time you hand over the baton to the next major project. Innovation champions are something that we found they were used on Crossrail, for example. We use them within Costain. And I think it's really important that projects have innovation champions, people who go out within the project teams, and not just the project teams, but broader than that, out into industry, and really find the best and brightest ideas and feed those up to management and help make those become a reality. You'll see my lovely chain there representing the supply chain. See what I did there? Very, very clever. And supply chain is absolutely critical. I think, well, I know there are over 200,000 construction companies that form our industry, and depending on how you gather that information, the figure is even larger. So this is where a lot of the innovation comes from. So one of the things we recommended was an industry innovation platform. And rather excitedly, one has very recently launched. It's called I3P, which stands for Infrastructure Industry Innovation Platform. So that's quite an exciting concept. So at the moment, there are a number of key clients joined up to that. So Highways England, Network Rail, HS2, EDF for Hinckley, Heathrow, and a number of Tier 1 contractors. And the thinking is that these clients have a lot of the same problems and challenges. So why not share those to the industry, and the industry can work together and work around those challenges and bring innovation to those challenges. New procurement models. I think this is an important one, and what came out of the research was that there's a lot of failing in this area. So I'll give you two quick examples. So one being, we came across a case of an innovation being shared at the work winning stage with a Tier 1 contractor, and that Tier 1 contractor then taking that innovation and giving it to their whole supply chain to then price it competitively, totally ruining the incentive for that company to innovate in the first place, which is a terrible thing. And then also, we came across the strange situation of, again, at the work winning stage, which is absolutely crucial. You could be working with a subcontractor get all of their expertise, all of their great ideas to build your price and submit it to the client. But then the client wants to see some kind of competition, so you have to go out competitively, and then in the end, don't award it to that supplier, which just strikes me as a very strange situation of not incentivizing innovation in the procurement process, because why would you bring your innovation at that early stage and they get the benefit from it, but then you don't actually select that subcontractor? So there's clearly some work needs to be done around procurement models. Client leadership. I think clients have a key role to play in driving innovation. We're seeing that on HS2 and Thames Tideway tunnels. They're building academic teams that they can consult with throughout the duration of the projects. They have innovation teams, and they're doing some great things in this area. But the real test will be, can this filter down to smaller size projects and taking that best practice throughout the whole of the industry? Innovation audit, I think, is something I'm really passionate about and will be driving over the next 3 years. So how can you go into a company, an organization, do a gap analysis exercise regarding their innovation capabilities and help them on that journey to become better innovators and help them accelerate and implement innovation? And I think that's a real area where constructing excellence can play a role in improving the industry in that area. My reference to supply chain commitment refers back to the procurement issue that I mentioned earlier. And this is a belief that I think it's a good concept to take your supply chain from a really early stage, fix them in place, and you take them through that whole project journey together. So the client, rather than buying a tier 1 contractor, buys a supply chain, which I think is a really good concept. Contractual clauses. So we're working with a law firm, and they came up with, and I'll share the report to people after this event. We produced an industry report, and within that report there are contractual clauses that can be inserted into contracts to help the transition of introducing innovation successfully onto projects. And finally, the social benefit measurement tool was born out of an understanding that tier 1 contractors don't really do anything in this space. Clients, to a degree, will look at the social benefit of a project that they are procuring. But then I think, because as an industry, we do so much in the social space, but we're not very good at measuring it. So I want tier 1 contractors in future to say, when they're bidding for something, I'm going to have this many PhD students, this many apprentices, I'm going to use this supply chain, which work in this local area, and will help the economy, and so on and so forth, which doesn't really happen to a great extent at the moment. And very quickly, I think I have 1 minute left. What is next? So over the next 3 years, very shortly, I will be embedding myself into the innovation team at Thames Tideway Tunnels. And they have a mechanism called the Tideway Innovation Fund, which is a large pot of money that's match funded. Anyone can apply to it and get match funding, and your innovation can be used on Tideway. So I will be looking at the innovations that are adopted from a contractual point of view and also a behavioral point of view. So the innovations that are invested in and used on the project, I will look at the contract and I will engage and interact with the people who are delivering the innovations, and to see what extent the contract hindered or promoted the innovation and its success or otherwise on the project. And also, as I spoke about, I'd like to take the innovation audit concept further, get involved more in I3P, and possibly introduce HS2 with a similar methodology. And that's me.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah.